The 14th thing I learned is that your vices define your character. I've met different people, some who smoke, some who drink, some who do whatever. And some would always complain, I think I drink too much, I think I do whatever. And then they try and go off what they're complaining about, right? I want to reduce drinking. And unfortunately, when they relapse, they go back to that thing they were doing, and it even becomes more intense. So don't usually try and fight something when you can actually see that, like, it's really your character. But I also think that you can only get to this point if you give yourself time to sit down and think about it. Like, think about it. There are things that I've tried fighting. Like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, no, this is me. Yeah. It also takes away the shame. It also takes away the shame. And if your vices, I think it's with taking away the shame, it also means that people can't necessarily use your vices against you to bring down your character, right? Because you know those vices are your character. Yeah. The 15th lesson I learned is that you only have yourself to disappoint. And goes back to vices. At the end of the day, if you sit down and you're very self aware about particular things, you know how far you can go. You know the extent of your capabilities. So if you don't sit down and consider, if you don't sit down and consider certain aspects and your bandwidth, unfortunately, you have yourself to disappoint. And I'm also saying this because there are a number of students I've met or people I've met who do things for other people. Like, yeah, I came to university because my mother wanted me to do engineering. Like, boy, engineering is hirang. So rather do something for yourself so that at the end of the day, when it's hard, the challenges make sense, right? Overcoming them is within what you saw for yourself, what you dreamt for yourself. So you honestly have you only have yourself to disappoint. The 16th lesson I learned is that everything is borrowed time. We all have to say hello and goodbye at some point. You have the opportunity to lose. Yes. Let me read that again actually. Everything is borrowed time. We all have to say hello and goodbye at some point. You have the opportunity to lose. So through my spiritual and traditional inclination, a lot of the times what happens is there'd be someone who's passed on would come for someone, right? And say, hey, I want to speak to this particular individual. And then that would happen. And then you'd realize that um, the person yearns for a physical connection of the person who's coming spiritually, right? But the problem is the spiritual person usually comes through because they want to bridge something, and that is usually somebody not having made peace with their passing, or not necessarily having made peace with how life is, right? um yeah, but also that's how relationships work. I've met so many people that I'm not in contact with now. We didn't even have to say goodbye, right? It was a bittersweet moment, but that happened. I also think I've gotten to a point where, because of my inclinations, I've gotten to a point where I have a very close relationship with death. For me, it's sad, but it's also yeah, no, he lived a very full life. Yeah, you have the opportunity, and I'm saying you have the opportunity to lose because it's between saying, oh fuck, I could have done that, and saying, yes, I did it. And it didn't work out, but I did it anyway. Yeah. It's such a beautiful thing. I'm thinking about it now. We all have to say hello and goodbye at some point. One day when I write a book, and I've been one day, I'll definitely write a book that is well encompassing of everything I'm sharing now. Everything is borrowed time. I think even sitting with myself now is borrowed time, right? The option of shooting this or not was the opportunity to lose. Um I have the opportunity to reflect on this one day and say, yeah, no, who knew? Yeah. The 17th thing I've learned is that the mind is made to think. Yours is to decide which thoughts you entertain. Ah, guys, you know, I was telling, when you're a spiritually and traditionally inclined person, you kind of then begin to attract people like that, similar people. I was telling somebody was asking me like, how do you cope with everything? And I mean everything. When you're in a group of people, a lot of the times your conscious will download a lot of things from a lot of people, right? And what ends up happening is you become not overwhelmed, but it becomes too much. So they were asking me like, how do you kind of sift through that noise? And I was explaining that because I know my conscious, the voice my conscious uses, I listen to that voice instead of listening to other voices, because at least then I know what my conscious is saying, and my conscious will always be positive. It will never be negative. So a lot of the times when I'm in a group of people or I'm alone, because that also happens, where the negativity kind of comes through, I know my consciousness has a particular voice that I need to listen to. But sometimes I also kind of sit down and look at the perspective of the negativity, right? Let the mind be. But also then around that, I've developed things like the Lord has proved greater and bigger things ahead, or mantras that kind of put me a bay. And I'm saying that because I had to develop those mantras from that experience. So the mind is there to think honestly, and if you get a thought saying you are ugly and you entertain the thought and you believe it and it becomes your lived reality, unfortunately that's what you decide to entertain, right? If you look yourself in the mirror and you think something is wrong with you and you entertain that, then unfortunately that becomes your own reality. So the mind is there to think honestly, and it can be manipulated to think positively. And I'm saying Dululu again, but also be aware that there is a sense of self-proclamation as far as your mind goes. You can literally speak against the negativity that might come, right? And that kind of then begins to elevate your level of thought. It doesn't always then become negative. But yeah, I think I've gotten to a point where I think about myself positively, even in the self-talk. Like where I say, oh bruh, obviously blended, I always make sure that I speak about myself in high regard, so that my mind begins to think of myself in high regard as well. Yeah. That's so interesting, actually. The 18th lesson I learned is that everything depends on the perspective you hold about yourself, what you believe about yourself. Literally, literally, literally. Everything depends on the perspective you hold about yourself. You know the number of times I've been at conferences, mind you. I started going to conferences, I think, in my master's. early masters, right? And because I do research in a very niche field, you'd get there as an expert and you'd speak and you'd share your opinions about a subject matter. And a lot of the times, the people in the room would look at you like you are crazy. Also, because I'm quite young and people kind of undermine young people. So, when you get into a room and you speak about these mind blowing ideas and people begin to look at you in a particular way, what only matters is you speaking about those things in confidence. And I have been in situations where I've had to say, yeah, I hear what you are saying, but I'm saying this from the knowledge I've developed, the time I've given to whatever I'm sharing now. So the perspective you hold about yourself, honestly, if you get into a room where you know a chair is not meant for you, unfortunately, getting into that room means you believe that a chair is meant for you. Whether a chair is actually meant for you or whether your presence matters more than the actual chair will be up to you. But I'm essentially saying you need to believe in yourself, because a lot of the times people who make it out of whatever, I guess, ideal world people are kind of limited into, are people who believe beyond what I guess society says about themselves. And I attribute this to queer people. Like, there are a lot more people I know who are comfortable in their sexuality because they had to believe that they're queer and they have to start cultivating that as they live reality. Um, Same for people in the closet. Like, if you believe the closet is for you, enjoy, right? Um, yeah, you can only convince yourself of that. If the perspective you hold is, yeah, no, if I come out batlong Jay-Z, sir, then that's for you. That's what you believe about yourself. Um, that's then you giving your self-worth to other people to control. So I think it really is in, like, when you wake up, the first thought that you have about yourself. I have a mirror in my house, and I'd usually wake up and I'd look myself in the mirror because it's kind of in a transitional room, and I'd smile at myself, just smiling at myself, because I think, yeah, because I think it makes sense to smile at myself, because chances are you'll meet people and they won't smile at you. Yeah. The 19th thing I've learned is that pushing yourself doesn't mean neglecting your well-being. Yo, guys. Yo, I worked the situation about working 3 jobs. I now work across regions. I now work across departments and still have multiple jobs. And I think I've gotten to a point where I plan well so that I don't have to push myself. And I'm saying this because when you kind of push yourself, you then begin to neglect the fact that you have to eat, you have to shower, you have to sit down and dedicate time to entertainment, watching TV, and stuff like that. But uh, the neglect then kind of cultivates a sense of fatigue because you're not eating enough, therefore, you don't have enough energy to kind of do the work that you actually want to do. Um, yeah, so I'd rather work through things than actually work tirelessly towards things. Yeah, no, I had to learn this the hard way actually. But thanks to my friend, like, I remember there was a point where I'd always go to her house and she'd make sure that I eat and leave it a lunchbox. I love her so much. That's actually her love language. Mine as well, but they hardly come here. But anyway, yeah, don't neglect yourself because you wanna push. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. The 20th thing I've learned is that eventuality is not a single event. And I'm saying eventuality is not a single event because at the end of the day, we are probably working towards something, either a disappointment or a success. And when you get to a point where you realize how your actions kind of contributed to the outcome of whatever happens, you realize it wasn't a single event. Like if I know tomorrow I have to wake up and go take down the drapings and whatever, but I'm staying up the whole night until 5 a.m. When I need to be there at 8 a.m. Everything I've done from the point of knowing that I have to be there at 8 a.m. contributed to the event of me being late, right? So if you leave things for later, unfortunately, it's not a single event. You've left things even from the point of knowing that you have to do a particular thing. Everything that you've done is the eventuality, right? Yeah, I think, and I'm saying this in the simpler terms because I think a lot of people become disappointed in themselves without actually thinking about their processes, right? Yeah, I'm thinking about it now. I sat down, opened my laptop, looked at my week, kind of slotted things in, but I'm like, it's my birthday. That week, from I guess last month, had nothing, and I wasn't agreeing to anything there, besides the teaching meetings and stuff, which are things I've been doing anyway. But if you kind of then let things catapult in whatever direction, it becomes disappointing. Wait, what's going on? Okay. So eventuality is not a single event. Like everything that you do, if you leave things for later, unfortunately things will go bad because you've left them. I know tomorrow I have to wake up at probably 6 to prepare for 8, or I wake up at 7 and just go take down the draping and come back, right? But from the moment of knowing, if I leave everything for later and I probably like sleep at 5, I can't be able to wake up at 7 and go there on time, right? So it's not a single event. Like all my actions, the fact that I actually actively decided to sleep late is the problem. Yeah, so you can think of that in other aspects of your life, but I think in simpler terms, eventuality is not a single event. The 21st thing I learned, Forever 21, is that you need to sit with your feelings a bit more. Um, we 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 sometimes want things to like go quick. The feeling of a breakup, go quick. The feeling of disappointment, go quick. We wanna hide and become invisible. But I've learned that sitting with your feelings a bit more allows you to go through the disappointment, or rather go through the feeling enough for you to not go through it again the next time. So if I experience a heartbreak now, it'll probably be, yeah, no, it wasn't for me. But I can do that because previous breakups, I've had to sit down and sit with the feeling a bit more. Um, yeah, even feelings of gratitude, like gratitude is a must. Even feelings of gratitude, I think both positive and not so positive feelings desire and require a bit more time. And I think time honestly is of the essence for everything that we do. Because if we don't really give ourselves time to feel and do all of these things, that's how you then end up crumbling, being easily triggered, because you kind of then push things back. But if you bring things to the foreground when they constantly happen, you don't necessarily have to deal with them later, and your body doesn't have to take on the emotional toll. It can literally go through the feeling for the whole week, and it's like, yeah, no, I fumbled. And at least I fumbled and I know. And it's not a, next time I'm like, I fumbled. Why am I doing that again, right? Yeah. So sit with the feeling. The 22nd thing I've learned is that regret is part of the character development, the foundation of improvement. Literally. Yeah, I've regretted a few moments, but I've then realized that I had to experience those moments in order to know and be aware of what they actually mean to me, um, process the feelings, but also see how they affected my life. I've also gotten so many rejections for job opportunities where I've either been told that I'm too young or overqualified, and it has gotten me to where I am now. Negative, yes, but like I said, it all depends on your perspective. I think I've also gotten, in this position that I'm in, I've gotten a lot of feedback, and I'm like, I regretted not bringing it up earlier, but at least I work with people who are more open to sit me down and say, hey, look, next time you should try and consider doing this. So regret is definitely part of character development. Um, Sit with that as well. The 23rd lesson I've learned is that you can't always get what you want. Oh man, I remember writing this when I was in Cape Town. Yes. And I don't remember what had happened, but yeah, you can't always get what you want. It's the same as accepting that things may not happen on my time or happen at all. Like you can't always get what you want. That's point blank period. Somebody actually said to me yesterday, but I can. I was like, oh, congratulations. But he was probably talking about, okay, makes sense. He's like that though. Okay, sharp. What? Why? And he did that right in front of our eyes after. Okay. Okay, yes. You can't always get what you want. And I'm very certain about this. The 24th thing I've learned is that some things take time, but it's important what you do in that time. Ugh, guys, some things definitely take time. My experience of buying a car, guys, my experience of buying a car was the worst. Was the worst. Like, was the worst. Some things take time, but it's important what you do in that time. And trust me, what I'm doing in this time, I'm cruising nicely. Oh, my experience was so bad. But I also think things generally take time. Like, if you think about it, where you've been in life, where you were before, and where you are now are two different places. And if you try and track the time, you probably won't be able to like fathom it, because what do you mean it took that long for you to get here? I'm also thinking, like, I was washing dishes and I was thinking, I grew up not less, but sufficiently, but it looked like less. But it made sense. It made sense why I grew up like that, right? And it also makes sense where I am now. Some things are taking time in my life still, but I'm actually very fulfilled with where I am and where I find myself today. So really be aware that things do take time, but it's important what you do in that time. You can't negative self-talk. You can't add pressure on yourself. you'd rather then prepare for that very moment. Like, get a license while you're trying to buy a car. Like, yeah. Yeah. Wow. The the 25th lesson I learned is that fighting for what you want doesn't mean you have to suffer. It just means that you have to choose that thing over and over again, even if it means upsetting or losing people. Um, I think my ambition has honestly been something worth fighting for, and I've lost people for it because I've always then had to remind myself of the goal I had when I left home and the promise I made myself. So I've lost people along the way, and that's fine. And I've lost people mostly because I've had to become very self-disciplined. I'm the only person I have in Joburg. My friends have families around, but it's also a means of saying I don't want to be a burden to my friends, right? So I constantly have to remind myself that I should be doing things with restraint. Um Waking up over and over again and fighting for what the vision I have for myself here is quite difficult. But when you do it every day, it starts to make sense because you're seeing where the energy is going. I've upset a lot of people, which is also okay, but rather than me, right? Um, and you can apply this everywhere in your life, honestly. I've left jobs and positions where I knew that staying longer would not necessarily benefit where I want to go. Relationships with particular people because they do particular things didn't necessarily benefit where I saw myself or the behavior I was trying to cultivate in order to match the path I'm trying to take. So a lot of people have been upset and a lot of people have been lost. But if you're one of those people and you're watching this, hey, we're all here today. Um, and yeah, I'm still on that track. The 26th lesson I've learned is that feeling bad for doing something for someone who keeps on taking doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means that you're slowly realizing your role in their life and can decide whether or not you want to be that or look for better. And I'm saying this from the recent experience I've had. Yeah. Like, when you sit down and you like reflect, I've done that. I've done that about this certain situation, but I've also gotten to a point where I've realized that it really doesn't make sense trying to like rush myself to cut the umbilical cord because it's too abrupt for me. Also, because I take time to process feelings, it's too abrupt for me. But it also doesn't necessarily give me enough time to get the person out of my system. And I'm saying out of my system because we are people and we kind of relate in very different ways. But even at that, some people, especially in this case, become the fabric of what you never thought would be. So when you slowly start to realize your role in their life because they keep on taking, it's up to you to decide. Like, if you know somebody's honestly not good for you and then you're staying, you definitely know why you're staying. And it's like being in an abusive relationship when people keep on saying, yeah, this relationship is not good for you, it's wrong, it's bad, and you're still in the relationship actively saying no, it's fine, and you're laughing with this person who's abusing you and who's doing all of these things to you. you've honestly come to that realization at some point, right? And you need to decide whether or not you want to be the access for them or not. You want to continue being the the product of their abuse or not. And it's very sad because a lot of the times people don't come to such realizations because they don't give themselves time. If you constantly like, and I think in my Ask Ovi videos I say this, give yourself time to sit down, probably every week or every 2 months or every month, and think about how certain things in relationships affect your life. I literally do that every 3 months. I just changed my house around now because it kind of then changes how I think, right? And I used to do that at home, which is something I like. So yeah, really sit down and evaluate your life in very intentional ways. It seems like a chore, but it really isn't. Because who are you waiting for to come and give you a wake up call and say, hey, you need to do 1, 2, 3? Sometimes you actually need to be that for yourself because the world has gotten more and more isolating, right? And people don't necessarily always have your best interest at heart. So if you don't give yourself time to sit down and evaluate your life, to be able to make very decisive decisions that kind of steer you in a particular direction that's beneficial to who you are and where you see yourself, unfortunately you're cutting yourself short. Yeah. The 26th lesson I've learned is that, of course, you're doing it for the first time. We all are. You are doing it for the first time, guys. I'm the first generation in my family to everything. And I'm saying everything: spirituality, PhD. And when I tell you, when you're that one person in your family or lineage to that point who's been chosen for that particular thing, it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be bad, it's gonna be gruesome. Also, because you don't have anyone for reference, right? But it makes sense to continue, right? We're all doing whatever for the first time, and it is bound to be hard, it is bound to be difficult. But if you're doing everything I've been saying, I guess all the things I've learned to the 27th point, you'll understand why this point is in 27. We're doing this for the first time. We all are. And it's a bit it's a bit sad, right? Because sometimes you're like, I didn't deserve that, but you'll see where that sits within the narrative of your own story, but only if you give yourself time. Yeah, only if you give yourself time. There are some things that you do for the first time and you promise yourself that you'll never do again, but it's in doing them for the first time that you can only know that those things are not for you. You don't want to do them ever again. So, yeah. I have two more as a bonus. I think the first one is your sexual life is yours to enjoy. And thank God for prayer, guys. Well, guys, that's all I'm gonna say. I also think we're very sexually liberated and very sexually active. And I guess sex has become an aspect of our socializing. Like, I was at a party and two people went to have sex and they came back and they acted like nothing happened. But I'm also saying I've been in situations where I had a what? What's the common one? Kinda UTI, right? Yes, a UTI. Remember can get a taking from drinking some. And I think at that time, I then had to take antibiotics. But because I was seeing someone, they also had to take antibiotics, and they're like, so yeah, I think your sexual life is yours to ensure. If somebody's saying, boy, I'm also saying, even if you're not sexually active, take PrEP. There's a 2-1-2 method. Take PrEP when you're going out to party. Take one pill after the 24 hours. Take two after. Do the 3 months testing. And be okay. And we experiment with sex. There are bathhouses, places like Factory, and I think my experiences from those places really kind of solidified this. And I guess the experience of dating someone who was well aware of their sexual health, right? Kind of then said to me, oh yeah, no boy, you need to level up. Yeah. And then the last one, I think I wrote this when I realized, yeah, no, ngidlubusha abami. You. The last one is that the world awaits. I don't know what brand of alcohol is that. I think it was a Flying Fish when it first came in. The world awaits. Oh, guys, the world really awaits. I traveled Cape Town. I saw Cape Town, guys. Cape Town is beautiful. I traveled Swaziland twice, actually. I've traveled, I've done everything I've never thought I'd do, right? So if you sit where you are and you're thinking, yeah, no, things are expensive, things are too much, or things are not for you, sometimes just sit down and plan and work towards that plan. You'll see where it goes. But I'm also saying the world awaits because you are full of so much potential. Like, you are full of so much potential. You just need to believe that the world awaits. Even if one door closes, the other one will open. The world is waiting for you to experience it. Wherever you are now, and you're sitting down and thinking, yeah, no, I'm in destitute, life is bad. Unfortunately, you're cutting yourself short because the world awaits. If you're realizing life is bad, what are you doing about it? And I'm not saying this in a condescending way where we're saying, no, we have unemployment. Yes, we have unemployment. But sit down and think, what's the thing I can probably do? What's the skill I have? And you might never know. The thing that people are frowning upon might be the thing that takes you out of Kasi, or that changes your whole life. I think I've taken so many opportunities and chances on myself that I realized that the world really awaits. When I sat down, people were going to do engineering things, and I said, I want to do film and TV. That was me saying, no. Right now, I'm taking the chance. And this is where the chance got me. Dr. Obvious Namala, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this segment. This was 27 things I've learned in my 27 years. Happy birthday to me. I love you so much, Obvious. And yeah, I hope you enjoy life, man. This life is for us. There's so much waiting for you. The world really awaits. Man, I love you so much. I love you so much. Wow, crazy. But yeah, thank you so much again. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. The world awaits. Bye. Wow. Okay. Okay.